on the main. It's cash in advance, come sun or come rain. But please stop by the desk at the end of your ride, so we can make sure you've been satisfied. Leave behind all of your troubles and tragedies up at Miss Henderson's Riding Academy. Most of the regulars each time they call head without fail to their favorite stall. But there are a few with ambition so tall, they won't be content till they've ridden them all. No knowledge required of a horse's anatomy up at Miss Henderson's Riding Academy. Take pride in their skill in the saddle, we'll be pleased to know that our staff never tattles. Should you hit the home stretch sooner than most, it's just between you and the filly you chose. So next time you feel lonely or just a bit low, you find yourself with an hour or so, there's a place on the hill of established repute where you can partake of an age-old pursuit. You'll think you're defying the laws of gravity up at Miss Henderson's Riding Academy. You're defying the laws of gravity.
And that's how we get started up at Miss Henderson's Riding Academy. Mr. David Hamburger, everybody. For those of you who don't know, welcome to 20 Question Tuesdays. I am Jeff Plankenhorn. For those who are tuning in for the first time, here's how it started. One day, pretty early on during the pandemic, on a Tuesday afternoon, I turned my camera on one of my socials and just started taking some questions like a workshop. I'm a musician by trade, and all of a sudden, tons of people started showing up, like songwriters and guitar pickers and producers and people in the business and people who had nothing to do with the business, who just loved music. And it became a thing I started doing every week, calling it, 20 Question Tuesdays. Well, Sheila Steele over at Austin Music TV, we want to thank Austin Music TV for putting us on the air every week in Austin on cable channel 16, ATT Uverse 99, said, hey, do you want to put the show on our channel? And I said, sure, that'd be great. So I got this fun, restreamy thing so I could go to multiple places like the TV station and like all my socials. And I noticed a little button with a person down at the bottom and a plus sign, and it said invite guests. And I was like, well, that's infinitely more interesting than me just yapping away every single week, even though it was going great already. So I started inviting guests, and the first week I had Michael O'Connor, and then I think I had Jamie Harris, and then Ruthie Foster, and Ray Wiley Hubbard, and Bill Kirchen, and all these wonderful people started showing up and doing this show. It's become something I really, really love doing on Tuesdays, and thanks for helping me keep it going. It's been really, really beautiful. Let's see. A couple of quick things as far as housekeeping are concerned. Let's see. Tonight I will be doing my all Beatles show. I put out a single, believe it or not, of a Beatles cover. Never thought I would do something like that. But I did a Beatles cover, and I put it out, and it's really cool. And the success of it is going really well. So I'm doing all Beatles songs tonight on my From Here to There at 8 p.m. Central, and on all of the socials, and again here on the television. This Sunday, we will be doing a benefit for the Sims Foundation with the Purgatory Players and Friends. We have all sorts of incredible musicians. The Purgatory Players Facebook is a good place to find out about that, or anywhere on any of my socials you can find out about it. The last time we did one of these, we actually raised over $10,000 for the food bank. It was incredible. It blew my mind. We had so many great musicians. We're having totally different musicians for this one. And let's see, we've got David Ramirez and Sidney Wright and Bob Livingston and Scott Strickland and Eric Betancourt, and all these great musicians are turning in videos for that. That's this Sunday. Let's see. My workshop, This Song Sucks, is all filled up. The workshop that I do with Scrappy Judd Newcomb, it's called This Song Sucks, because not every song you write is going to be beautiful. And so that's all filled up. So let's see. Beatles, Sims, workshop. I can't think of anything else right now, and I really want to get started talking with David. And I'm so happy to have him here. So here we go. See how unprofessional I am? I hit the wrong button. David Hamburger, everybody.
There it is.
It couldn't have been more perfect.
I was sitting here trying to figure out how to share it on Facebook, and instead I just started it again. So I was getting you like this.
Oh yeah, and what happens is too, like you'll go to like the Facebook page, and then you'll hear like a little delay. So
Yeah.
that's lovely and annoying as well. But it's okay because we've already got a lot of great questions to get started. You and I were catching up before the show, listening to your song and talking about all the stuff that's going on. The first thing I want to tell to everybody, and I'm going to say this about 15 times during the show, we're putting a link up here. David is being really, really generous. And could you just real quick before we get started say what this link gets people and what they're going to?
Okay, so over at my website, it's Blues Week, and I'm posting a lesson or a live stream every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I'll be doing more of a Q&A about some other teaching that I do on Friday. So every day we do a different topic related to getting better at playing fingerstyle blues. Today's topic is groove. And so if you go over there now, you can sign up and you can download like a 20-page PDF that's got all the tab that I'm covering. And you can watch today's lesson, which is about a half an hour long. And you can also go back and watch yesterday's lesson, which was on improvisation, like specifically how to improvise when you play fingerstyle blues. And so
free of charge.
Yeah, this is all. This week's all free.
So so folks, I want to tell you real quick. I think I read my first David Hamburger guitar article about 20 years ago, and we became friends, not too shortly after you moved to Austin, but I was already a big fan and had read, in magazines and stuff like that. Like, I always loved your articles and how it really wasn't like, you got soul and you've got heart as well as being a great educator. Those two don't always go together. So I really want people to understand when I say, like, David has, like, shown me a lot of stuff, like, you're the kind of person that I go to and I say, hey, I really need to work out a fingerstyle guitar part, and you help me out, like you did with that Patreon thing a couple of months back.
Yeah,
And
fun.
so when I say that it's worth in looking into, I really, really mean it. And that's why we're putting it all over. Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for putting those links in the chat as well. Danielle, you're really awesome at that. Thank you. But now that we know that, and we've talked about that, and I've done my gushing for the moment, I'll probably do it again in a little while. I like making you uncomfortable. That's part of our relationship as well.
And I'll gush back when I get a chance.
Okay, cool. Well, that's the secret of gift giving, is never do anything for anyone unless you expect something in return.
Well, that's like the rule in Hollywood about sincerity. Do you know this?
Oh, tell me.
Oh, well, it's like, the cigar smoking exec is like, kid, the most important thing in show business is sincerity. Once you can fake that, you got it made. I'll be here all weekend. Try the fish.
No, yeah. Try the fish. Yeah, make sure you try the fish. So here's some really, really great questions right off the bat. We have a question from a songwriter I love and good pal of mine, Jana Pokop.
Oh,
Now,
hey, Jana.
Jana is one of those people that I love watching her evolution, going from I'm strumming and I'm acoustic to I've got a baritone guitar to I'm learning how to do Logic to Jana, you are fearless with her. She's going to try new stuff out. And it's really, really great to watch because as she just broadens musically, you go, yeah, and you get excited and stuff. But she has a really, really great question. Now, I have my answer for this, and I'm really curious as to what yours is. I'm going to scroll back up, and I'm going to read it because it's really well put, too. I struggle with applying chord voices up the neck because I always feel like I make them sound thin. Maybe a hand strength thing. Any up the neck go-tos you use, and or should I just start pumping iron with my left hand? And she says, fully prepared to start doing reps. Ha ha. Now, I think I know what you're gonna say, but I'm curious as to your answer as to, left hand strength in general and whether or not you are supposed to pump iron to get stronger.
So this is not a question about how to find them. It's a question about how to play them in a way that's comfortable and doesn't hurt. Is that your impression?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and also she says she how to play it where it doesn't hurt. And, should I try to like make my hand stronger versus I'm leading you on. I'm leading you.
Okay. Here's my evasive answer, which is I don't play bar chords if I can help it on either electric or acoustic guitar. And so I am always looking for ways to play partial chords in conjunction. First of all, I just taught last month I taught a whole workshop on playing blues up the neck. And I only did it because I had given several other workshops where people were like, okay, this is great, but how do I take this up the neck? And I'm like, why would you want to? Open position's great. Like open positions where the guitar sounds the best to me. But so I had to sit and think about it. And I was like, okay, I do play up the neck, but I'm always doing something because when you play up the neck, it widens the gap between the bass strings and the top note, right? And so you need something in the middle. And so I'm always thinking in terms of what's my open note and what's my upper, like how am I going to fill in the middle? And I have to be careful how I say this because I was saying in a lesson, like, and don't forget about the inner voices. And I was like, I can never stop hearing the inner voices. And I was like, that's not, But so, I mean, like, I'm thinking about.
I'm going to make it full screen. Go ahead, show.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm thinking, if I'm two things. One is, can I get an open note? In which case, I can get an A7 up here with only playing like with 3 fingers. So it just feels like an open position chord. But the other thing is if I have to play a bar chord, then again, I'm thinking like, if it's A and I want this, then I'm going to play this instead and use the open A string. And if I absolutely have to play something like, a B flat or a C chord, then I'm going to think of like, these over the top with the thumb shenanigans like that. Or I'm going to think about these, what most people call the Freddie Green chords, right? So if you want a C7 here, Freddie Green, the rhythm guitar player with Count Basie for 50 years, had this whole vocabulary of 3-note chords. So when you hear that, it's just 3 notes moving around. So again, no bar chord, none of that. It's just framing the chord with the most essential notes. And, if you're playing solo and trying to keep things accompanied, then you want to hear bass notes. And this specific sound has a very like genre specific sound. It sounds like 30s and 40s jazz. But you can do whatever you want with it, and it gives you bass and chords. And so you don't have to play this, and you can get this more pointillistic thing where you've got the bass. I keep playing the wrong voice. So, I would just say there's strategies like that to avoid playing bar chords, avoid things that require a heavy grip. Forget it. Like, it's not worth it. Just find a way around.
I love that. And it wasn't what I thought you were going to say. But what I love about what you just said right there is also something that a lot of people don't realize. Some of our heroes, when they were figuring out what to do on the guitar, they were figuring out economy of motion. They were figuring out basically how to make it easy to play for them.
This Jorma Kaukonen or Kaukonen.
So important.
Yeah, someone asked Jorma in an interview like how he played the Reverend Gary Davis repertoire. And he said, well, let me just say this. If you're trying to figure out something I'm doing and it's hard, you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
He was trying to find the simplest way to do things.
Joe Pass said the same thing. He was like, I don't like to play anything that's hard, with his big Italian accent. And you're laughing because it's Joe Pass, flying around the neck. But if you slow down everything, but if you slow down everything, he had like things that just were comfortable under his hands. He hated doing tendonitis building black cow chords. But which is awesome, right? So he would figure out ways to play it where it wouldn't hurt. My big brother, who was a big influence on me, said, do the Groucho Marx. And I said, what's that? He's like, Doc, it hurts when I do this. Then don't do that. Right. And so like I would always think of Groucho Marx whenever I was trying to play something. The other thing, Jana, that I just want to mention, and I know David's the one, but just for a little bit of help, classical players always do buzz scales. And a buzz scale is when you just push down towards the neck until you get sound. And what it does is it teaches you that you don't have to push hard. And when you start realizing that you can play a scale with no thumb on the back of the neck at all you're doing is laying your fingers down. You're not squeezing, you're not trying to make muscles, you're just trying to figure out how to lay them so that they sit. All your volume comes with your right hand, and you will give yourself hours of more playing. When your hand cramps, stop.
That's a really good point.
Right?
Two more things about that too, which you made me think of. One is like even the most experienced players, like I've noticed when I'm working on something I don't know, all the tension goes into my hands. And when I'm working on something new, I squeeze and I play really hard. I play much harder than I will once I know it. So just be aware of that. And the other thing is there's a great book by the jazz pianist Kenny Werner called Effortless Mastery. And he talks about going down to Brazil. You know this book, Plank?
I know of the book.
Yeah. He goes like to Brazil to study with this pianist. And for 2 weeks, the guy tells him, don't play any gigs, don't practice. I just want you to sit at the piano until it feels like your fingers are falling on the keys.
Yes.
Like, what? And he does it. And then after 10 days, he can't take it anymore. He's at a party and these people want to jam. And so he plays and he's like, his hands were just doing everything for him. And he spent the next 30 years just exploring this idea of how little do I need to make the sound come out. So I love this. It's a great read, whether you play jazz or not. I really recommend that.
I'm going to say it's Effortless Mastery
By Kenny
I
Warner.
love putting these in the Effortless Mastery, just so that it gets into everybody's right there. Yeah, really understanding that you don't have to press hard. So then, now Lee, this is an interesting thing right here. I'm gonna put this up. Lee says, but when I try, it just buzzes or sounds tinny. That's true. That's absolutely true. But as soon as you get, to that point right where the note is, that's the whole point of the buzz scale, is that like as you go closer to the neck and you realize, wait a second, that's not buzzing, you're like, man, I don't have to push that hard to get a great sounding note. And the same thing will eventually happen with chords the more you do them 8,000 times, David, everybody seems to be geeking over your camera because I think it's not your camera. I think he just looks better than me. Okay. He's just a more handsome. I look like I got up on 8 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. So what camera are you using? Do you mind saying?
Okay, I finally, after 4 or 5 years of shooting videos on my phone and teaching live streams over a webcam, I went and got this Sony A6400 digital SLR, and I went up to just, can I say where I got it? I mean, there's this great camera store in Austin called Precision Camera. You can actually walk in and talk to people, and they'll show you stuff. As opposed to like
we don't tell them to go there. We just say it exists.
Yeah. It's a great place, and I also got a lot of advice from a friend of mine in Italy named Romano, who has become like the sensei for me and another teaching friend of mine, because he's a gear guru, and he helped me figure out like how to work everything out with like OBS and all this other stuff. So I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff as nicely as I do without his help. But so it's an Sony A6400, and then I just got a new lens for it, and that's why it looks so cool, because the lens has that depth of field thing where the back looks blurry. I was on my song last night with my buddy Django and a bunch of other people, and he was texting me during the meeting. He's like, "What are you using for your camera? You look like you're in a rockumentary." And I was like,
"Exactly." That is what you want.
Yeah,
that is what you want. That's
so it's just, I bought the camera stock, and then after a couple of months, I went back and I was like, it was kind of like the joke about the brass rat that I'll tell some other time. But basically, I went back and they were like, "Oh, you're back for the good lens," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm back for the good lens."
Wait, you have a story? No, tell the story. We love stories.
Well, it's political.
Oh, well, I don't care.
I don't
okay, you're going to keep it out. You're going to keep it out for now. You'll tell me after the show, that's for sure.
I'll keep it back.
All right. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Somebody was just sending a tip in and said thanks about the show. Thanks very, very much. We share the tips, and basically, I just want to make sure that, David can buy the family like a nice meal or a tank of gas, whatever you need. So thank you, everybody, for putting in as far as that's concerned. The lens, Ted wants to know, he says, okay, I have an Alpha 7. Is that the same? Are we talking about?
I'll have to look at what it says. I don't actually know. It is.
This is not what I was expecting the show to be about. But you know what? If people are learning, then I'm thrilled.
It's a Sigma 30 millimeter lens. It says
Sigma 30 millimeter lens.
That's all I know. All I know is I went there, and they were like, it was like being. Plank will understand. Anybody who plays guitar, like I used to go and like be like, oh, can I try the Mexican Strat? Can I try the American Standard Strat? Can I try the one with the humbuckers? Now I'm like, we're like sitting there with my camera, and we're going, okay, let me try the 50 again. Let me try the 30 millimeter. Let me try the 50 millimeter again. It was. This is what my friends and I do now.
There's a great meme going around. There's a really, really great meme going around. It's a picture of two guys, and one is sitting in front of like a 1995 desktop computer and saying, this is why I want to get into music, because I can't stand the idea of sitting in front of a computer screen all day doing data entry. And then the next one is a picture of us in front of our screen with Pro Tools going, so I decided I would become a musician, and like, it's so
dark.
Knowing the irony of what we do. Hey man, I'm thrilled though to be able to have still stayed alive, and kept it going through the pandemic. And resilience is not necessarily a bad thing. We're musicians, we adapt. And I think when we all come out of this, you probably think the same thing, there'll be a balance. There'll be a balance of live shows and people doing. I don't want to stop doing my live streams because people watching in Scotland, and people watch in India, and people watch in Japan. So I'll probably still do them a little bit, you know?
No, I mean, it's very weird having this, teaching online and getting these emails from all over the place,
Right. Speaking
people
of
are
that,
like,
once
I couldn't
again,
beat your live stream because it was 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia. And I'm like, okay, I guess I better mix it up when I do the streams,
yeah,
So,
people are like, David's camera has hijacked the podcast. Lol. LOL. Okay, so that goes to a really good question for my friend George Webster,
okay.
who's I don't think he's in. Are you in, George? Are you in Corpus right now? I know you're at school, whatever that means these days. George has a really, really great question. He says, I don't know if this is a type of question to ask you guys, but I love this question, and I can't wait to see what your answer is for this too. He's like, I finally got a Strat, and I can't get a satisfying tone. And it's such a great, okay, he's in Austin. All right, George, cool, perfect. It's such a great question because we're talking about the Stratocaster guitar made by Fender. And it has such a history of being probably the most famous electric guitar. You think of Hendrix, you think of Clapton, you think of Mark Knopfler, who all played other guitars, but maybe that was their big one. Look, here he goes. So when we're talking about a Strat and you say you're having a hard time getting a satisfying, and what's really fun about this is that he has to get his out. He has all these guitars on the wall, but the Strat is the one that you just keep. Because many of us Austin guitar players and many of us who play guitar, we have a Strat, but we don't use it for everything because everybody plays a Strat.
I haven't played this in like 5 years.
Exactly, right? But for me, getting a good tone on the Strat is kind of like, boy, just not the way it is for everybody. I'm a big fan of the middle position on Strat, just the middle pickup. I really, really love it. And I'm also a big fan of Strats that have a humbucker in the neck and a humbucker in the bridge position, kind of the Hiram Bullock version of the Strat. And that little switch in between, where you get the out of phase. Never been a fan of that sound. Just not my thing. I mean, I know it's very cool. It's Sultans of Swing and certain Clapton. But now we're going to talk Strats with David, and he's going to talk about how he gets a tone that he likes. Those knobs are really key, though. If you watch old videos of Hendrix, he can go from dirty to clean just by swooping down his volume knob. I love the middle position. Middle position's my favorite on a Strat. Talk to me.
So this has not been out of the case. I'm serious. Like, I never played this guitar, and this was the first really good guitar I got. First good solid body I got, and I didn't get it till I was 25 years old.
Yep.
I had a Les Paul copy that I got when I was 13, and I taught workshops and played gigs with that guitar till I was in my 20s.
I'm going to make you full screen for a minute. Go for it.
I was so sick of it. I was home visiting my parents in Boston, and I was like, I'm going out to the guitar stores today, and I'm coming home with something that looks like a Strat. I don't care if it's like a Fernandez, it's going to look like a Strat. And I got to Cambridge Music in Cambridge, and they had this, and I played a million things already that day. And it's the 74, and I found out later, it wasn't original, which is why it wasn't a fortune. But this was the 80s, so they still weren't. The 70s ones weren't expensive yet. So it apparently had the neck kind of shaved down and refinished, and it has a Seymour Duncan in the bridge pickup. And this is not the original whammy bar, but the rest of it is legit. So, and I wanted a Strat because when I was 15, I went to, there was the theater in town that played all the music films, right? And so they played The Last Waltz, and I went with my buddy, Bob Colella. I think we went together, and everybody in that movie plays a Strat. Everybody has a cool Sunburst Strat. And I was like, okay, that's obviously like the awesome guitar to own. So as far as getting a sound and getting a tone, I guess the end of that story is I played this guitar as my main guitar until one birthday in my early 30s. My best friend Peter came over to my apartment with a Telecaster he had just bought. And it was a Mexican, like $278 Mexican Telecaster. And he said, hey, I got this guitar. Do you like it? And I picked it up and I played it. But I was like, yeah, this is great. He said, cool. That one's yours. Mine's in the car. He went and bought 2 of them at Sam Ash and gave one to me. He was like, I haven't given you a birthday present in 10 years. Here's a guitar. So I think I started crying and said something like, "You got me a guitar. I love guitars." So that immediately
come back
became
in
my
for
new
this.
guitar. I still have it. I've played that Telecaster up on the wall. I can pull that one down later if you want.
I know the
Played that
Mexi
guitar
or
on
Telly. Yeah.
sessions, on gigs. I toured with Joan Baez with that guitar. It's a $300 guitar, and I've played it everywhere. I've had engineers look through the glass and go, "Cool axe, man. What year is that?" I'm like, 98.
Yeah, exactly.
But it sounds great. Okay, so I'm answering the question. So my buddy Rich Hinman, who has played with, oh my God, do you know Rich? Do you know his work at all?
I don't.
He was my student when he was 14. I was literally like, I remember the day that we have the same birthday. So I turned 28 the day he turned 14. I was twice as old as him. But he's played with, his last gig before the pandemic was playing with Katie Lang. He plays steel, he plays guitar. He played with Katie Lang. I went to see him at Austin City Limits. He played guitar with Roseanne Cash. He's a monster. So good. Tasteful, groove machine, just everything you want in a musician. Anyway, he said one time we were sitting around, he was like, "I've decided the key to good tone is knowing what good tone is." And I was like, genius. Because you got to know what you're going for. It's a hunt and peck thing. It's like, does it sound good yet? No, we'll change something. Does it sound good yet?
Yes.
So,
so many people will say, I'm sorry to interrupt. So many people will say it's all in the hands. You can pick up any guitar and make it sound good. That's to a certain extent, that is true. But I also ascribe to the fact that most guitar players, when they pick up a different guitar, change the knobs to make it sound like them. Yeah. And all of a sudden they start like going over to the amp and they go, "Nah, that's a little bright." Or I want it to punch a little bit more. And so they start moving it. And every single knob matters, but you can also change just your amp and have everything, dimed, so to speak, and it'll work. So, but please continue.
You can get any guitar to do. I feel like I can get almost anything to do what I want to do, partly because what I like is relatively clean, relatively. Yeah. So it's not like I have to have this chain of pedals or whatever. But to me, it is about the hands and it's about the headroom. And so when I'm,
what do you mean by headroom? What do you mean by headroom for those who don't know that term?
More volume than I need, and I want to roll it down here so that when I want it clean and I want chords, if I'm doing, I don't even have enough right now. Hang on one second. So now
we're getting more headroom. This is how he's getting more headroom, by turning up the amp a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to have to hit the amp hard. If I have to hit the amp hard, then it gets plucky. If I have a lot of room,
nice tone.
And I have dynamic, I have room to get, I can be quiet. And if I don't pick hard, it's really warm and round. And if I push it, then I've got stuff,
Can I break in there also real quick? I want to break in right there for all of you guitar players. That was David playing dynamics on an electric guitar. Okay, if you don't think about it from the beginning, you really, really, really want to be able to play soft with your hands and play loud with your hands. And if nobody ever tells you that, you think you just beat the soup out of it, and that's what we do. Oh. But once you get to a point where you start understanding how the guitar works a little bit more, you're playing loud, you're playing soft, your right hand does so much. Just in that microcosm you just played.
If you want, if you want to know why you can't hear your vocals and the mix isn't great live, it's because you're playing your electric guitar too freaking loud. If you're going like this and you're singing, forget it. Go like this.
Yeah.
That's why people play back here. The strings are tighter. You got more control.
Yeah.
If you set it up right, it's just like an acoustic guitar. You hit it loud, it's loud. You hit it soft, it's soft. So as far as tone for like playing like blues and rootsy stuff, my thing is I never want to carry a huge amplifier around. What I have is this.
Which one of us is frozen? It might be me.
You're I don't know. I can see me.
Am I back now?
Yeah. Everybody loves the sound of a small amp turned up, but you want to be able to get it clean too. So I always use the pedals as a way to artificially saturate the amp. So I'll use 1 or 2 overdrives. Like I have an AC booster and an OCD. And So right now, I don't know why this is so loud and hissy. It's because I never play this guitar. That's why.
Well, yeah, and we also don't know, like, you pick up a guitar after a while and you kind of forget which things you have to fall back into the rhythm of how to make it not buzz and how to hold it the right way and all those kind of things.
It's
You
just
really
a
have to
loud.
do that.
That's one reason I don't play it. It's just like a loud single coil guitar. It's hissing like a mofo. But so if you have it set up to really saturate.
Notice he's got it in the middle pickup position as well to begin.
What's that?
Did you happen to... I'm a middle pickup guy on Strat. Are you a middle pickup guy? Like, I like the other positions, but I love that's my favorite position on a Strat for so many different things.
I don't know. This only has a 3-way, so I can't get
really. I don't like I've never been a fan of the out of phase.
But so the thing is,
so that's great. I love it. It's a 3-way.
Cranked and it's distorted like this.
Yes,
and is the hiss just outrageous coming through the mic or no?
No. It's okay.
So here's like really saturated, right? Right? And so if you're soloing, that might be cool. But if I turn it down to 7,
that's right. Yep.
It's just enough that like it sounds. It's not thin, but you can hear the voices.
I'm going to give people too a perfect example because, George, you said, what about Jimmy some neck pickup? You're absolutely right. It's beautiful. If you go watch the most famous version of Jimi Hendrix playing Like a Rolling Stone, watch how in the bridges he dimes it and it's huge, during the choruses of How Does It Feel? And then as soon as he backs it off to, I'm going to say for him, probably between like 6 and 5, somewhere in there, he scoots it down. All of a sudden the guitar is just like much cleaner. And it was all done with the knob and his hands.
I don't want to be dancing around on the pedals. I don't want to be like stepping on a pedal for a solo and come back. Because my whole thing is, if I'm playing electric guitars, I want it to be fluid between what's rhythm, what's fills, what's everything else. So there is no moment where it's like, now is the solo. And then the other part was, now I'm staying out a little bit. It's like I want it to kind of have this give and take. And so the guitar has to be able to do that without the pedals doing it for me. So I have to be able to get it. The farthest I want to go is the volume dial. That's the farthest I want to get away from the strings.
Yeah,
I love it. And then if I got to do this, I'll do some of that.
Yeah. Now, for those who are just tuning in, we're about halfway through. This link right here is something I'm going to also put one more time in the chat. And David Hamburger, our guest, is being really, really generous with the lessons. And this is a way that you can find out more. And basically, you're going to get some free lessons for some really, really, really cool stuff. And find out more about David at the same time. So I put that in there for everybody. I encourage you. Randy D says, what amps does David prefer? And if you're anything like me, I love amps as much as I love guitars because of their different characters. I noticed that you've got one amp back there, the one with all the side knobs.
That's actually... That amp's terrible. That's an old Silvertone.
It's a Silvertone. I've seen those in so many studios, and I really love using it. You're waiting to get that one fixed up, right? Because it's so great.
This one's messed up. It belongs to my friend Billy, whose studio I rent. And he was like, what do you want me to take out of here? I was like, well, leave that.
Yeah. I've been at studios before and like seen that and gone, okay, I'm going to use that one. I find personally, Randy mentions, besides asking what amps does David prefer, he says, I love the small amps because I'm a sound guy. And it's true, big amp does not necessarily mean big tone, but boy, it sure is fun sometimes. If you're in a stadium, yes, a big amp is fantastic. If you're at the Saxon, it's a dumb idea. We don't need to do that. Yeah. Even David Grissom, who loves to play with big tone and big amps, he pulls a smaller setup when he goes and plays the Saxon. I'm sorry. Yeah. So about amps, talk to me a little bit about your kind of take.
Well, I've only owned, I think, 5 amps in my life. And so the one that I have now, I've had for over 20 years. It's just it's a original 65. Well, it's a 65 Deluxe, and it's had
Fender?
all the, yeah. It's a Fender.
For those who don't know.
It's a Blackface Deluxe. I got it in New Orleans for $450 and a Polytone Mini Brute. And
I still have a Mini Brute. It's in Austin.
I got rid of my Mini Brute.
Great jazz amp.
I traded my Mini Brute, and then I took it back to New York, and it kind of needed to be gutted. So it's got a different speaker. It's got new caps. So I mean, but it's been my main amp for this entire time. And I've never really been a Marshall guy. I've never really been a Les Paul guy. I've just always been like a Fender guitar and amp guy. So that's just, it's the one amp and it works great. So I'm kind of like, I guess that's my amp. I went through a period when I was doing a lot of recording where I was like, oh, it'd be cool to get a Vox and it would be cool to have a Marshall and kind of like layer up these things. But I never did. And I don't really need it right now. So that's what I got.
Well, I mean, it's also such a thing. Tell me your experience with this. I would say a good 15 years ago, and I was definitely recording at that time, a little bit. We would never, ever, ever use a plugin. And what I mean is like a plugin in Pro Tools or a plugin in things for an effect, and certainly not for an amp.
Yeah.
But that being said, they've come a long way.
Oh, no, when I started recording like, commercials and stuff like that, ad music and library music and film stuff, I started using Guitar Rig, and just like, it's the same. Well, it's almost the same thing as what we were just talking about. It's like, you want to get a good sound out of a plugin, you sit there and you work on it until it sounds good.
Which means a computer effect that's in maybe your digital audio workstation or an outboard thing that you plug in, those kind of things. We used to think, oh, God, no, I would never use that because it sounded awful. They've gotten pretty good, and most people will say they can hear the difference, and most people can't. Well, many people can, but
my buddy Jeff Mackerlin in New York, who is like one of the best musicians and certainly like electric guitar player, like when it comes to tone.
Yeah.
That guy knows everything. And so, I remember like playing him a bunch of stuff, and he was like, oh, that one's really cool, man. And I was like, that's the one I tracked with the Deluxe. Unprompted.
Of course.
His ear went right to it. So I'm like, okay, there is a difference. But I figure I feel about it the way I feel about reverb on the snare drum at a mix session. It's like, if I can't hear the difference, I'm done. Like, you guys want to sit and worry about reverbs on the snare drum for the next hour, knock yourselves out. But I withdraw from this debate because I have nothing to contribute.
I mean, those things, they matter as much as you put stock into them, for sure. There was a great engineer who we just lost last year named Chet Himes. And Chet was telling me, and he did, Christopher Cross albums and, the early Eric Johnson stuff. And so we're talking about a guy who had to deal with tone and meticulous people who really, really cared about these things. And he had... right around the time Pro Tools came around, he was like, I would record bands kind of with both. And he's like, what he found was, when he went into Pro Tools, tried to make it sound like what he did with analog.
Yeah.
And by doing that, and knowing what the analog sound like, people were generally picking the one he had more control over.
Well, and I remember, I wish I could remember who I was talking to. Oh, I think I was talking to, Billy Henry. Do you know him in town here, Billy? Yeah. So I'm in Billy's studio. He moved and he's got a new studio, and I'm in his space. And anyway, he worked for years as a staff composer at Tequila Mockingbird here in town, where I started doing my first ads in the 2000s, and as a freelancer for them. And we were talking one day, and Billy's a wonderful engineer, and he engineered my Pennsylvania Station Blues record. We recorded it here, like in this space, which is weird to think about, but which you produce. And so anyway, so we were having lunch, and I don't know how it came up, but I was just kind of asking him about what it was like back in the day doing music when they were still working on reel to reel and they were still using a board. And as soon as he started talking about like, having to like come in and make sure that like the tape deck was working, it was calibrated, and everything that needed to go into just having the session ready for the day, I was like, Oh, that's why everybody liked Pro Tools. It wasn't because it sounded better. It was because it was faster and
It was
you could
this.
recall things. Yeah, it did everything. It took away all the pain in the ass parts. It replaced it with a bunch of new pains in the ass. But at the time, it just seemed like this is going to make life so much easier. And, I mean, and so there's always
plugins are the same way. Plugins are the same way now when we're working in a studio. It's kind of like, am I going to get out an Echoplex that has a reel-to-reel, and am I going to clean the heads with alcohol with Q-tip swabs?
Yeah.
Or am I going to pull up a plugin that really sounds like it, and probably I have even more control over? I never thought I would be that guy, but there's just times, I mean, especially if it's for a commercial. Sorry. But, we got to turn that kind of thing out.
Yeah, because it's not your, like, if you're going to like sit in a house in Woodstock, New York, and make a record for 6 months with your friends, then it's worth spending the afternoon going, let's get out the screwdriver, because when the day is done, if everybody likes it, it stays. But if you have 2 days or 1 day to make a 30-second demo and you spend 6 hours with a screwdriver, they could decide in 30 seconds that they don't like the Echoplex.
And somebody else too.
What's the point?
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's that whole thing of like, you just don't want to, once you get used to a certain workflow, like you want to focus on making the stuff, not on tweaking, like you want to reduce all the friction between you and getting stuff onto tape,
Well, and I find that I want to spend way more time the older I get actually playing music.
Yeah.
Actually doing the thing that I love and not the stuff. I mean, and boo-hoo, I've got to do a bunch of stuff, that doesn't have anything to do with music to keep my career going because I'm not a household name. But the more time I can actually play music, better it is for everybody, and especially me. I want to make sure we still have some time and we still have some questions. If anybody else has some questions, thank you, James Taylor. Jim, first of all, he says, I highly recommend Fingerstyle 5, a great system and a great teacher. Right on. Okay. Is that something of yours?
I should explain. So the Fingerstyle 5 is the actual monthly membership that I run for our students. And so it's a thing you can join and you can get new material every month. There's an archive of songs you can work on. I do live streams. We talk about groove. We talk about improvisation. We talk about arranging. And we talk about how to create solo instrumental fingerstyle blues.
I like that I can do this.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Tim.
Keeping up the facade that I'm a professional. But as we go on, I've also got a really, really great question from my friend Doc Tari is what we call him. That's his nickname, but it's Lee Ketteret. And I love this question. He wants to know what your favorite, first of all, he wants you to tell people what alternate tunings are, and he wants to know which ones are your favorites and why.
Okay, well, I should say hello first. It's great to see you, and I miss seeing you at Strange Brew. An alternate tuning is just an alternate to the standard guitar tuning, E, A, D, G, B, E. So, and the idea is typically that you tune to a chord so that you can do...
When you're using an alternate tuning, yeah.
Yeah, so this is my favorite alternate tuning. And that's open C tuning, which is a little bit unusual. The two most common ones are open D and open G. And that's what you hear, first of all.
Open meaning an open chord.
Yeah, let me grab another guitar that's already tuned to that. So hang on.
Okay, cool. And then we'll go back to C, because I definitely want to ask you about C.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the C-sack of tunings, if you get my drift.
Hey! I do. I'm a C-sack guy. That's D.
This is D. So low string goes down a whole step to D. A string stays the same. D string stays the same. G goes down to F sharp. B goes down to A. E goes down to D. So when you play it, it's like you were playing an E chord. It's like you were playing this chord, but it's open. And the main thing that I think of it is as a tool for slide guitar, because it lets you get chords but nothing says you can't play it without the slide. So right. So that's a arrangement of Cigarette Blues that Roy Bookbinder does on Bookaroo, one of my favorite guitar records.
Bookaroo is definitely, I'm putting that in. Bookaroo by Roy
That is-
Bookbinder. Anybody who wants to know a little something,
That's
is it Book-A-Roo or Bookaroo? I think it's Bookaroo.
with an exclamation. Yeah, it's produced by Jerry Douglas. It has a
Yep.
mob of great A-list Nashville guys from the 90s on it. And unlike most 90s records, it doesn't have like gated drums and deep reverbs. It's like
It's such a great album. It's unfortunate he never played with a band, very often. He would go out solo, and it was so great. We got him to go to Strange Brew so many times.
I talked to him about that record, and he actually, I mean, from his point of view, I was like, this is one of my favorite records of yours. He's like, yeah, you kind of can't hear what the guitar is doing, because the whole art to him is like putting it all together in one instrument.
Sure.
But there were some solo guitar songs on that record, and they also did such a good job of wrapping the band around him. Like, to me, if I was going to make a band record, that's one of my archetypes. I'm like,
it's definitely
that would be my model, like one of my models.
It's a high standard. Well, so we talked about, just to make sure that we get a little bit here, you talked about this, but his question is, number one, you explained what an open tuning is, but you claimed that C is your favorite. I really want to know why C is your favorite and which C you use, because there are more than one open C tuning. So let me get rid of this and let's put up the C tuning that you use. What is it?
It's C, G, C, G, C, E from low to high.
That's my favorite. Yeah. That's my favorite C tuning.
And I heard Bob Franke, of New England folk singer, use it. And then I heard another New England guy, Paul Rochelle, one of my very favorite guitar players and singers. And he has a record with Annie Raines called I Want to Tell You? I Want You to Know. That's another one of my absolute favorite records for this kind of music. And for 6 months after I learned what the tuning was, I would go and play it, and my hands would go to all the D stuff. I would go to like...
Meaning the shapes, the old shapes.
Yeah, I'd go to the D tuning shapes, and it would just sound like horrible. And it finally worked out what you could do with it. And then I was like, not only is this great, but I love it because A, not everybody else is using it, which is part of my sort of perverse thought process. I'm like, I want to use the tuning that...
Why sound like everybody else?
That not everybody is using. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the other thing was it's a whole step lower. So it's easier for me. I don't have a really high voice. So like going for E is impossible. Going for a high D is 50-50 shot.
Can I break in again? I want to tell this for the budding guitar players and the budding singer-songwhiners. Yes, I've trademarked that. The thing is, too, choosing a tuning, because it's better for your voice, not necessarily sticking in some place. Sometimes it's form and function. It's necessity being the mother of invention. Pick your cliche. The reason a lot of times is because it worked better for you. Simple and plain. A lot of people don't think, they think, wow, I can't sing in C. It's like, well, sure, you can sing in C if you change around the tuning and you jump that to that part of the range, but this tuning had a certain growl and kind of fit with your voice. And therefore, boom, another good reason to choose that tuning. That's answering Lee's question of why it's one of your favorites.
But it's also, there are some sounds you can get in it that I really love. So you can play things that are very sort of bright and folky. And you get these huge spreads, with the root, fifth, third on top. It's just
more like a piano chord.
3 notes.
It's a lot more like a piano chord.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful sound. So there's that, but also it's got all the
blues is there.
All the blues stuff is there. And so And these kind of voicings. Right, and so then you can play slide too with all that stuff. And it's got the third on top, which no other tuning, like G and D, don't have the third.
Exactly. Yeah, so talk about that one more time. When you say, for those who are just moving around, okay, the other two tunings don't have the third on top, meaning the space of a third, like C, D, E. That's a third, right?
The interval doesn't have the interval of the third interval of the chord. So
on the top where you can play blues licks there. You're always playing them in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, to play those licks, you're playing them in the middle. You're not playing them on those high two strings. Just a couple more blues licks on those top strings that are around the thirds.
Yeah, so
yeah. Also, for a couple of people who are on here who know our Texas singer-songwriters that we love, Purgatory Road by Ray Wiley Hubbard, C tuning.
Oh, cool.
Eliza Gilkison uses a ton of C tuning, and she's a really great self-accompanist and finger picking. She uses C tuning on things like Highway 9 and Tender Mercies and songs from that album. It's a great thing. I'm glad you're getting the electric now because it's great on electric, right?
Well, here's my favorite thing. Why is this sound? All right. Okay, just sounds dreadful. Maybe it's one of the. Oh, there we go. I think I had a bad cable. But so back in the '90s, right when Roseanne Cash's 12-song demo, and around that time, and around the time that A Few Small Repairs by Sean Colvin came out.
Yep.
Got to interview John Leventhal at his 12th Street studio, and there's a sound on that A Few Small Repairs record that drove me crazy. It's like it's got the same kind of wide voicings, and so he uses. He'll take he just calls it low C, and all he does is take the A down to G, and the E down to C.
Yeah, a lot of guys do that, and gals, because they just don't want to bring a Barry guitar.
Yeah, and so then, that's what's wrong. There's a pickup out on this guitar. So then he's got root 5-3, and I need a flat pick, and I don't have one handy. But this is too muddy. Let me try to clean it up. It doesn't sound great, but he's got these kind of voicings. So
yeah. Oh no!
It's all that stuff. I'm kind of butchering it compared to what he's doing.
No, but you're giving the idea, and that is not C tuning. That's standard tuning with your A tuned down to a G and your C or your low E tuned all the way down to a C.
It's like you can think of it as like a variation on drop D tuning,
The sound of Cabbage Alley usually means that we are getting close. But for everybody who is watching us on television, we always continue the conversation. We make sure we get all of the questions that we have out online. So if you need to, stick with us on there. We've got some time, but I want to make sure that I ask the one question of my own every week that I get to ask. And say those goodbyes again, too, in case we go off in the middle of the show, because, I can only handle too many things. You understand. So, first of all, thanks to Austin Music TV. Thanks to Kirby Walker and AustinCityJams.com. Don't forget, everybody, 8 p.m. tonight Central, I'll be doing my Beatles show. Don't forget, everybody, on Sunday, the Sims benefit. Really, really important. Purgatory Players sponsored. Lots of great guest stars on all the socials as well. And before we get off on television, I really, really want to make sure that anybody out there knows this is a really, really wonderful thing that David's doing, where he's giving you basically some free lessons, and you can learn a lot. This is blues guitar mostly, right?
It's solo fingerstyle blues, yeah.
Solo fingerstyle blues. David, thank you so much for that. And as we're getting close to going off on the television, we may go off in the middle of this question, but it's always my favorite question to ask. I'm going to leave that up actually. What is your favorite guilty pleasure music? And I'm talking about, what do you listen to that is, and a lot of people say, I'm not guilty, and I get that, okay? Because it all started because I was on the show and I let everybody know that I was a Fanalo. And that when I was a child, when my mother was playing classical music and Stevie Wonder and all these things that shaped who I was, she was also playing Barry Manilow. I can't help it. If I hear Can't Smile Without You, I get a warm, fuzzy feeling. Same thing with Copacabana. I get it, but that's my, that's my thing, that I'm sort of not guilty about. What I've had people on here that are wonderful musicians saying they were huge Spice Girl fans. I've had people on here that were, folkies who were into metal, etc. What's yours? What's your, and you can't go with something like, a lot of people go with ABBA. And it's like, well, that's not so guilty. It's just, it was pretty popular, but there's a lot of good music there too, new, old, whatever. What's your fun, guilty pleasure music?
Well, I haven't listened to this music in 30 years on purpose, but when I was first learning listening to music, I loved the Monkees. And I think if I heard the Monkees now, I would just be like, yep, it's still awesome. I know it's just I know what it was and where it came from and how it's not exactly what it's pretending to be, but I still love those songs. And I would probably sit and watch the whole show again if I could.
Well, then I have a challenge for you. And that is to come up with a nice fingerstyle arrangement of something like Last Train to Clarksville. Because here's the thing. You don't even have to do it now, but I'm sure you could.
It's got to do that roll.
Yep. Dun, 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 yeah! That's great. That's great. Okay, so here's my point too: is that it's really, really fun to take yourself outside of the box, and sometimes like somebody asked me one time, to do something kind of out of the box, and I did Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus, and it's like, well, of course that song is good. It was written by 7 people. I'm not taking away anything from Miley Cyrus. She did a great job of it. But 7 people wrote that song, It's like they worked really hard to make that a big pop hit for her. Same thing with any industry creation who isn't, reality based, like Maroon 5 or, they're 5 underwear models who can play. But some of the early songs were really, really, really great. There's nothing wrong with pop music. Just, know what it is. Know that, you've been spoon-fed it.
What did you call it? Non-reality based music?
Kind of. That's kind of what it is. Okay, we are off.
There was a great article recently about the anniversary of the song Smooth. And the year-and-a-half long process of getting that song made. Fascinating. I wish I could remember where I read it. But just what it took and the machinations and the songwriting and the production and the politics and the calculation that went into whether Santana was even going to do that song. It was just an amazing, amazing story.
It's quite a journey when you look behind the curtain. And I don't have a problem with that. It's just, popular music I mean, look, the Beatles were pop. Hendrix was pop. Dylan was pop for a moment, and we can't really get on our high horse about it that way. But I do think it's important to know that you are being marketed to. And the Monkees were like that. They were an industry creation that was marketed to people. It doesn't mean the music wasn't good. It doesn't. That's really not a problem. Didn't mean to get on my high horse about that. But you take somebody like the Monkees, it's like, yeah, man, those are good songs. And isn't it fun? I mean, everybody heard Richard Thompson's version of Oops, I Did It Again.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while you were saying what you were saying.
And we were like, my God, it's so good. Christopher Robinson asks, can y'all repeat again where David is doing his fingerstyle blues lessons? It's a big hole in my playing and would love to check it out. This is this right here. And I'm going to go ahead and put it again. This is probably the best way that you can just, once you get to Fretboard Confidential, and we are off the television channel now, so we can do as many calls to action as we want. Go there, sign up. It would make me really, really happy. You guys, I go to David and ask questions about guitar. Help me make this guitar part better. Often. So if there's anybody I can say, is gonna, teach you stuff and have it have soul and be musical as well as be a great educator, it's David. So regarding that, I guess we are kind of out of questions unless anybody has something. Let me make sure I haven't missed anything. Oh, this was good. So Pete Smith asked about any news on Club Staccato shows, streams, recording. I know it's just a side project, but that's a band that you have with Eric Betancourt, who's also been on the show and who's also on the Sims Benefit on Sunday. So any news about Club Staccato, or can they at least find some music online to listen to?
There is no new. We actually played right before we finally started. We kind of got our act together after a long layoff right before the pandemic, and we played a couple of gigs and we had a few rehearsals. In fact, I remember the last rehearsal we had at John Chipman's house. He was like, God, I saw this crazy thing on the news. You should have seen this guy explaining how you have to wash your hands or else bad things are going to happen. And we were just like, what? He was like, yeah, he was washing the back of his hands, the front of his hands. And we were just like, and then like a week later, we're like, oh, that's what that was about.
Yeah.
So that's the last time we were all in the same room. And so, there's no real gigging to be had. And we haven't talked about how to do something virtual. So, we were talking about doing all kinds of stuff right before then. But I wish I had more to report, and I don't.
Well, you can find some music online. You do have a live album.
Yeah, and I think there actually is just like a club. Eric will kill me for not remembering this, but it's been a while. But I think there's actually just a page with clubstaccato.com where you can.
I'll just at least do this.
I think we have
two C's and two T's spread out. I always forget. Staccato. I forget that dang Italian.
I know.
Italian is so much harder.
It's the syllable you land on has the two letters staccato, but I think it's actually either both.
Yeah. Anyway, I got it wrong. I'm sure whatever it is, I'm sure I have it wrong. Kate Howard, did you see my question? I was off the stream for a minute and might have missed it. Kate, did you email the question or is it in? I don't see it in my email and I don't see it. Repeat your question. We have a moment. It's nice and early. We just getting close to the end, but we'll stay on for your question, Kate, if you still have it.
Especially
Kate Howard. Yeah, right.
Kate Howard, wonderful songwriter and wearer of hats. I'm a fan.
Yeah, no kidding. Good person to follow socials on for sure. For many reasons. Kate is probably typing her question right now, and I'll say one more time, just the executive. Yeah. We like a tip because it's just this is how I help out my people who get on the show. Thank you. If you got $5 and you want to put it in there, this really, really helps out my peeps. So that's nice.
Yeah,
Kate question. Oh, Kate's saying 1 moment, please. Oh, Dan Jason has a Facebook.com Club Staccato. Dan, you probably have a lot of videos on Club Staccato as well on your Dan ViewTube.
Oh, really?
Oh, man, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he's got a bunch. Dan's been, archiving Austin musicians. I mean, he always asks before the shows. Different inspiration for music and lyrics is what Kate asks about.
Different from what?
Different from, like, are you asking Kate, like, where he gets his different inspiration from music and lyrics? Help us out a little with the question. We've got time. Take your time, type it well.
I could start freelancing on that one, but I'll
Do
wait
it.
and see exactly what she means.
Do it.
Well, I find deadlines inspiring. I'm in a song group again, have been since April, since the lockdown. Some friends of mine started that I used to go to song group with in New York, started an online version. And so I've been writing a song a week since April, except when I haven't. And so
they don't kick you out of this one? You get kicked out of a lot of them if you don't.
I mean,
you don't get kicked out of the songwriting group?
It's frowned. Well, so Bob Hillman, who runs it, would rather that you show up even if you don't have a song. He's like, just come and hang out. And I only miss if it's like, I'm like, look, it's my kid's birthday.
Oh, you guys actually play the songs for each other?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's another thing.
This is like a 3-hour
live Zoom
every Monday night, live Zoom.
Wow.
Bob moderates. We always have there's like a topic first. So for a while we were doing, everybody would present a song that was an influence on them, and it would sort of present like why it was important to them. And then we get into the meeting and everybody plays their song, and with a timer we do a 5-minute critique, put the lyrics up, the whole shebang. It's so fun.
That is so much different than any songwriting group I've ever been in, where we turned in a song every week, and whether or not people listened to it, I never knew.
Yeah, no, this is like, if you're like, I wasn't sure about this line, is this landing for you? People are like, are you sure you want to do this here? Like, I mean, and these are like some monster writers. These are like some of my
pretty
favorite
incredible. Songs. That's one that I would think about being in one of those. But anyway,
it's been really great. And so, and we actually we're actually going to put out a compilation that's getting mastered right now. Everybody picked one song from the last 6 months and re-recorded it at home, and we're going to get it all put together and do a release. So it's pretty fun.
Well, here's Kate's specific. Does he get his inspiration for his music from different places than his lyrics?
Oh, that's interesting.
It is. She always has interesting questions.
Your music, different. Okay. So when I started doing February album writing month 10 years ago and writing 14 songs in February, the big revelation of doing that was learning how to write lyrics first. Because I'd always felt like, coming up with music, no problem. I'm a musician. I got ideas. But then like coming up with lyrics, I can't do a song unless I feel like the lyrics are like something I'm really dying to sing. That's why I write it, so I can have cool things to sing, songs that I like to sing. And so what I started learning how to do was how to work lyrics first, which I had done intuitively before then. Like there's a song on my first record called The Laundromat of Ill Repute that is one of the only songs from my first record I still play. And it was just because I came back into my apartment in Brooklyn, having been to the laundromat around the corner, and that phrase popped into my head. And it took a long time to write the song and to get all the pieces right, because I knew immediately what that phrase meant to me. And I knew that like it was like making a watch, like everything. I rewrote the bridge 8 times. I was like, this has got to be just so, or I won't have fun doing it. Yeah. So I noticed that. And so for several years in February album writing month, fom.org, go check it out. It's super fun. I would use, they had a word prompt, they had like just a tool that would just like spit out random titles. And then for a long time, I was doing Matt the Electrician's song group, and he sends out a prompt every week, like a phrase, and you have to shoehorn the phrase as is into the song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes I would end up rewriting and changing later. Like once I turned in the song, when I went back to rewrite, I noticed sometimes like I would tinker and take it out, In fact, I was doing, I'm sorry, off the Beatle track. I'm just blanking on his name. I feel terrible. Awesome guy, the DJ in town on the Co-op who does. He does.
Oh, is it?
I feel terrible. I'm forgetting your name.
Rush. Is it Rush?
Yeah, Rush.
Rush Evans.
I was on Rush's show. I played one of the songs, and I was like, "Yeah, this is from Matt the Electrician challenge." But I think I ended up losing the original phrase, and someone else in the group, and I'm forgetting her name too, and I can picture her right now, and I feel terrible. But anyway, she called, or like whatever, like got in touch with Rush during the show. She's like, I know that prompt. I have a song from that prompt too. Kind of like you and I both have a prompt from our group, our short-lived group, we both have a song with the random array.
That's
so,
right.
So I have my random
Mine's
array
Live
song.
Today, and you have yours. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so I wrote a lot of words first, like phrase first, title first kind of things. And I'll still do that. But for the last 4 or 5 months, I've been obsessed with Charlie Hunter and his
Ooh.
7-string guitar playing.
Yeah.
And so it's the first time in years that I've had like a guitar project of my own, which is to try to figure out how to play those kinds of non-folk and blues grooves. So, and I'm not saying this in any way is what he is doing, but it's just it's like that thing when you love a musician, you're like, well, I can't do that, but here's what I can do with what I'm inspired by.
Right.
Which is
better anyway.
It's just the idea of like, I'm so used to like either the alternating thumb,
moving bass, yeah,
or it's like it's the steady bass. But so I've been trying to take these those kind of grooves, which opens
and
up
then playing something on top.
And try to get that kind of thing going.
So good.
That's given me like a whole different platform to write songs on. So sometimes I'll just go, well, like, here's something that would be really wonderful to be able to play because it just feels cool. And that's why I started playing guitar, because it's like, I want to make these cool things come out of the instrument. And so then I'm like, well, now it's so like I've been for the first time in years, like writing music first sometimes, and then hoping to like find a phrase or something that I can start to build the song out of. Because I find that when I'm writing words first, it completely tells me like, oh, this is the phrasing, this is the rhythm. But
this is what the music is going to do.
Yeah. But that tends to put me in kind of a box. And so writing a song every week, I've learned how to take those words, and even though they seem to dictate a certain phrasing or rhythm, how to step back and take a big breath and go like, well, could they fit somewhere else? Could I? And I learned that from you when we were working on that record of mine together, where you were like, I like this, but could you put some space in? Because I tended to be like, blah, 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 blah. And like of learning how to put more and more gaps in and more breathing room. And it's opening it up. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't have to sing so much. I could
don't have to sing it as hard, right?
Yeah. And then noticing it like songs that I love, how much space there is, and going like, ooh. And like really having more of like a three-legged stool between like, the groove and the words and the melody and all that stuff.
I like the three-legged stool thing. And I'll tell you what I learned too from Miles Zuniga. My story is this. When we were doing this song, we were writing in the studio. And I was at the studio and I said, I got this really, really, really great song, but I just I love the music. I don't like the lyrics. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, let's just start over. He's like, we're in the studio. I was like, I don't care. Let's just write something. And we did. And it ended up being the song that Patty Griffin sang on. But as we're writing the song, we get to a point when he says, we're done. And I said, what do you mean we're done? He says, we're done. And he's like, the song's done. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me I'm going to do a verse, a bridge, a verse, a bridge, and a chorus, and then I'm going to sing the same bridge and a chorus over again, and that's it? That's the whole song? There's 2 verses and then a bridge and a chorus that we repeat? And he goes, you obviously haven't listened to a lot of popular music. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I don't listen to pop music that much. The song was done. He's like, dude, we've said everything we need to say. And that was kind of like, because I kind of came from this song has to be this and it's got a whatever. And he's like, no, we've said everything we need to in this song. And it was like, it took a lot off my shoulders. There's been a couple of songwriters. Miles has been one that really, really helped me a lot with that kind of thing. Gary Nicholson also, teaching me that I do songwriting because it's fun, not necessarily because it's painful. Like songwriting was such a torture for me for so long. It was such a thing where I really thought that to get to it, I had to just live hard, be hard. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, no, I do this because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And like my whole life changed, for sure. Okay, wait. Okay, people are checking. And anybody who's in those comments, you bet, we'll check out your buddy. We'll check out your buddy, and we'll check out the closest Dan can come to Club Staccato. My guest has been Mr. David Hamburger. Big thanks to, Austin Music Television, AustinCityJams.com. Thanks everybody for checking out the stuff. I'm online tonight at 8 p.m. doing a bunch of Beatles songs. Thank you everybody for joining. Thanks Lady D for always putting things in the comments. That helps me and my guest a bunch. Thanks everybody for the tips. One more time, because I haven't done it enough. I'm going to tell you, if you're a guitar player and you play any kind of fingerstyle stuff and you're going to get some free lessons by going here from David, you'll thank me. Even if you just take little bits and pieces of it at first. He's a great educator, and I have had a blast hanging out with you today, man.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I always like to say I love being had.
The music business.
I know, the business of music. The business of music. Okay, folks. Oh, did I not put it in there for everybody, Danielle? Here we go. There. Now it's on all the other ones, too. Thank you for the heads up. Thanks, everybody. And David, we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm going to have you on again, too, sometime, because people obviously loved it.
We didn't play all the guitars. So.
You hang out. Yeah, we got more guitars to play. Someone asked how many guitars you have. My answer is always the Stephen Bruton answer: one less than what I need.
Totally. Yes.
All right. Have a good one. Okay, stay on with me, David. Everybody, thank you so much. Go check out David Hamburger at this website and get some free lessons.